If you remember the summer of 2008, then maybe you also remember that strange moment when the JonBenét Ramsey case suddenly just stopped being headline news. There was no trial, no new suspect, no confession, only one announcement, issued by the District Attorney's Office in Boulder, Colorado, where Mary Lacey was serving as DA. The Ramsey family had been cleared. Just like that, the story was over. An ending so simple, it sent a chill down your spine. Based solely on one DNA sample, specifically touch DNA, found on JonBenét's underwear, Mary Lacey declared that no one in the family had been involved in her death. And so, John, Patsy, and even Burke, who was just a child at the time, were officially removed from the suspect list. No longer under investigation, no longer persons of interest. From that moment on, the nation seemed to collectively fall silent. And for many, myself included, that silence wasn't relief. It was something else, something much stranger. A feeling of loss of trust, loss of justice, loss of that quiet, fragile hope that maybe, if we just waited long enough, the truth would eventually come. Touch DNA, for anyone outside the forensic world, sounds convincing. Solid, like an indisputable scientific conclusion. But if you've followed cases from the 90s, from O.J. Simpson to lab scandals, you know that forensic science has its flaws. And touch DNA, it's one of the most contamination-prone forms of evidence there is. One light touch is all it takes to leave it behind. A factory worker, a packaging employee, even a careless crime scene tech could have transferred that sample. Yet Mary Lacey, a seasoned prosecutor, proud of her independence, chose to put her full faith in that one piece of DNA. No cross-examination, no courtroom scrutiny, no opportunity for anyone else to challenge the claim. Many praised her for her courage, for going against public opinion, for choosing science over emotion. And look, I don't believe she did it for politics, but I also can't support a decision made in such isolation, especially when the cost was the silence of justice itself. JonBenét's death no longer had anyone held responsible. The case no longer had momentum, and the public quietly stepped away, as if an ending had already been written. An ending without a killer, without a trial, without an apology. Some people said, well, maybe it's time to move on. But if you've ever raised a child, ever crept into their bedroom at night just to make sure they were still breathing, then you know there are some deaths you never move on from. Not because you want to hold on to pain, but because you need the truth, just to keep going. As for me, I don't know who killed JonBenét, but I do know this. When a prosecutor can end a case with a single statement, that's no longer justice. That's a compromise. And if you think the rest is just rumor and noise, stay with me. Because there are things Mary Lacey left out. Whether by choice or by circumstance, I can't say. But I can say this: they deserve to be revisited. One more time, if only to make sure we don't forget. Now, imagine a crime scene like this. A 6-year-old child is found dead in the basement of her own home. There's a ransom note, nearly 3 pages long, written on paper from inside the house, with a pen also taken from the family's own supplies. A flashlight, neatly placed on the kitchen counter that no one in the house claims to own. A white cord tied with a precise, professional knot, unlike anything else found in the entire home. And, most importantly, no signs of forced entry. Every door and window still intact. Now imagine you're the prosecutor. You're standing in the middle of all these strange, chaotic details. And then you go on national television and say, "We don't need to worry about any of that. We have DNA, and that's enough." It sounds bold. It sounds scientific. But it also sounds terrifyingly cold. Some called it courage, a show of strength in the face of public pressure. But many others saw it for what it might truly have been. A clever way to walk away from a case that had become too exhausting for everyone involved. Mary Lacey never outright dismissed the crime scene. She never said the note didn't matter or that the flashlight was irrelevant. But in her entire decision to exonerate the Ramsays, she made no mention of any of it. Not a single line analyzing the strange handwritten ransom note. Not a word about the flashlight that perfectly matched the fatal head wound on JonBenét. Not even a passing reference to the cord with a knot described by experts as highly specialized. All of it quietly pushed aside, as if none of it had ever existed. And when asked why she made that choice, Mary Lacey replied bluntly, "We chose to follow the science. The rest, no matter how unusual, can be manipulated. But DNA doesn't lie." It was a statement as cold as ice, and one that left millions asking the same question. Even if DNA doesn't lie, how many other truths are being silenced? Touch DNA, the very foundation of Lacy's decision, is one of the most fragile forms of biological evidence. One light touch. A flake of dead skin. Even someone who packaged the underwear in a factory could have left that trace behind. Top forensic experts, including Dr. Henry Lee, have warned that touch DNA is not strong enough to serve as a standalone conclusion. It's prone to contamination. It's easy to misinterpret. But for Mary Lacey, it was the master key, the one piece she needed to shut the entire case down. I'm not against following the science, especially in a case as tangled and emotionally charged as this one. But what I, and so many others, struggle to understand is why she stayed completely silent on everything else. You don't resolve a homicide with a single scientific conclusion, not when the crime scene is overflowing with unanswered questions. Yet, Mary Lacey made her choice, and she chose one path, leaving the rest behind. They say truth has many sides, but in this case, the DA chose only one, the one she believed couldn't be manipulated. And the irony is, that very choice made the public more furious than ever, not because she chose science, but because she chose only science, alone, absolutely, and some might say, desperately. Personally, I believe truth is rarely neat. It's scattered in the small things, the things most people overlook. And when a prosecutor can say, the crime scene doesn't matter, then justice loses something essential. Its soul. You want to know what angers people the most? Not that the case remains unsolved, but that the one person with the authority to seek answers chose to stop asking the questions. But to understand why Mary Lacey had the confidence to do what no other prosecutor dared to do, we need to understand the woman herself. In the next part, I'll take you back to the past, to the story of a prosecutor who defied the system more than once, a woman who truly believed she could see the truth, even when everyone else had already looked away. If you want to understand how Mary Lacey was able to do what no other prosecutor had dared, publicly exonerate an entire family once suspected of killing their own daughter, you have to look back at her past and at how she once chose to stand against the very legal system she worked within. Lacy was never a traditional prosecutor. She didn't follow procedure for the sake of procedure, and she certainly wasn't swayed by local political pressure. In fact, throughout her time in office, she stirred waves within Colorado's justice system by choosing her own path, driven by instinct, by intuition, and by what she personally believed justice should look like, even when that belief went directly against the entire investigative apparatus surrounding her. One case stands out: the Tim Masters case from 1999. Masters was a young man, convicted of murder as a teenager, not because of physical evidence, but based on his drawings and so-called odd behavior. When Mary Lacey took a closer look and saw signs of a wrongful conviction, she reopened the investigation, despite pushback from local law enforcement. The result? New DNA evidence proved Tim was innocent. The conviction was overturned, and Lacy was praised for having the courage to confront the system's mistakes. From that moment on, people began calling her the Fixer, the one who dared to do the right thing, even when it wasn't popular. But with that reputation came a shift in her working style. She became more independent. Too independent, some said. She stopped sharing data freely, stopped collaborating closely with police, and instead created a kind of investigative silo, an inner circle that she controlled entirely, where she had the final say on all conclusions. And when the JonBenét Ramsey case landed in her hands, that shift became clear. She immediately separated herself from the Boulder Police Department, a department already seen as clumsy, error-prone, and discredited in the public eye. Instead, she formed her own investigative team, operating directly under the DA's office. No local detectives, no pressure from the original investigators, no ties to those who had first laid eyes on the crime scene. Everything was reset, on her terms, and because she had once been right in the Tim Masters case, this time she believed in her instincts more than ever, a belief so strong it was almost unshakable. But here's the thing, no one is right every time. I don't believe Mary Lacey acted out of self-interest. She wasn't trying to clean the table before leaving office, like some critics claimed. She truly believed that justice could live outside the system, that the truth didn't need widespread consensus, and that kind of confidence is both admirable and dangerous. Because when you hold enough power to decide the course of a case and no one around you is left to challenge you, then what you see as truth becomes the only truth. No dialogue, no debate, no checks or balances. And that raises an even more haunting question. Can too much independence in the justice system actually kill the truth? Not with deception, but with the isolation of an unchecked ego. Personally, I don't doubt Mary Lacey's competence, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't chill me to the core. Knowing that a decision as monumental as clearing an entire family of suspicion was made in a room with just one voice. No cross-examination, no trial, no challenge from defense attorneys or opposing evidence. And yet, that decision became the official truth, not because it was proven, but because no one was allowed to question it anymore. And when all the light is cast on a single individual, what gets left behind in the shadows? In the next part, we'll look at what that decision really cost. Not on paper, but in reality, a case shut down, a door to justice locked tight, and a society still asking questions, with no one left to answer them. By definition, the JonBenét Ramsey case is still open. But in practice, the moment Mary Lacey announced the family's innocence, the case was effectively closed. No conclusion needed, no killer identified, no one held accountable, just a strand of DNA and a public statement. Everything else, the crime scene, the testimonies, the suspicions, the theories, all of it faded into background noise that no one seemed willing to hear anymore. What's most troubling is that her decision didn't just pause the investigation. It built something much harder to break through, a legal wall. Because once a prosecutor publicly clears suspects, any renewed investigation, especially one that revisits the family, risks violating the principle of fair treatment under the law. And that wall isn't just legal, it's psychological. No agency wants to be the one to challenge a declaration of innocence that's already been stamped with authority. And so, over time, the JonBenét case became a symbol, not of justice, but of collective helplessness. A child brutally murdered in her own home, in modern America, surrounded by law, media, technology, and hundreds of millions of watchful eyes, and still, in the end, we all fell into a kind of unspoken silence. No suspect, no trial, no confession, no truth. All that's left are debates in online forums, circular arguments and late-night discussions, YouTube videos dissecting the ransom note, and the same frozen faces from grainy footage of the 1990s. And the most frightening part? Society seems to have grown used to it, that some cases will never be solved, and that's normal, that some questions will never be answered. And we're expected to make peace with that. But not everyone has accepted it. Many still believe Mary Lacey's decision was a mistake. Not a technical mistake, but a mistake in turning an unverified conclusion into an untouchable truth. A decision that robbed us of the chance to reinvestigate. That stripped the justice system of the pressure an unsolved case is supposed to create. Think about it. If that declaration had never been made, maybe the case would still feel urgent. Maybe new evidence would have emerged. Maybe someone in the shadows would have stepped forward. Maybe, just maybe, one tiny detail could have pulled the truth up from the mud of memory. But no, the door was shut, and no one wants to be the first to open it again. Because to do that would mean answering a much harder question. Who got it wrong? And how did a child end up dead, with no one held responsible? Personally, I don't believe the truth has disappeared. It's still there, just waiting in a place too many people are afraid to look. And the longer we wait, the more expensive that truth becomes. Mary Lacey has stepped down. The case has slipped into history. The Ramsay family has retreated from the spotlight. But one person still remains, still lying in that basement, waiting. And if justice truly is sacred, then someone, someday, will knock on that locked door again. But perhaps the final question isn't for the prosecutors, or the investigators, or even the media. Maybe it's for us. Are we willing to accept an ending without the truth? Just because it's easier for everyone?